My words fly up, my thoughts remain below. Words without thoughts never to heaven go. The world over, people flock to places of worship, and either offer prayers themselves or pay the priests to deputize for them. By such means they hope to secure favors, which may be for comfort and riches, or for the obtaining of power, position, and rank, or for the inviting of God's wrath on one who has incurred their displeasure. In consideration of their having offered so many prayers, people fondly believe that they have hired gods or his angels to procure for them that which their own merit and effort could not secure. This belief, that anything ranging from pardon for sins to riches and power, the destruction of enemies, and the removal of undesirable persons can be had through prayer, is encouraged by a wily priestcraft that makes its living on such superstitions. This the priests abet, unmindful of the fact that the fostering of such beliefs leads to moral degradation and an inflammation in the psychic part of man's nature. It is by the practice of such prayer, encouraged by a corrupt clergy, and adopted by a superstitious humanity, that the spiritual fiber of a nation is eroded, and the ignorant millions led down the steep declivity that ends in black magic. Nations at war with each other offer up prayers to high heavens for their own victory, in complete disregard of the fact that the enemy too is indulging in the same bit of black magic, inviting decimation and death on thousands in the name of the prophet and for the greater glory of the Lord. If prayer wielded no effective force, there would hardly be any reason to warn people against the dangers which they daily and almost hourly invoke. It matters not whether the man who prays is ignorant of the potency for harm which his action possesses. The dolt who strikes a light near a powder keg may not be aware of the fact that he is about to become an active agent in the producing of an explosion. But the explosion does take place. The cause having been generated, the effect is inevitable. So too with prayer. For, whether uttered in a dead or living language, there is behind it the force of a human desire generated by the will of the man who resorts to prayer. Most men are more than anxious to be fooled into the belief that their prayer, properly stamped and posted, will reach the highest. It does not. Prayer is not the mumbo-jumbo that the recitation in a dead language represents. At the back of that prayer, and motivating it, is the individual's hidden desire, his unexpressed and sometimes inexpressible thoughts. It is these thoughts which coalesce with elementals, the little lives that throng the unseen atmosphere, and which have the facility to move in, around, and through the man. These lives are of various kinds, of which one particular kind ordinarily predominates in the individual under the law of consubstantiality. It is these lives which become the carriers of the desire message that motivates prayer. These lives can go only to that center of consciousness with which they are in affinity. And their affinity may be with a god, a demon, the ghost of a dead man, an evil spirit, or even a disembodied entity that finds its pleasure in the wrecking of human lives. The prayer can reach only to that destination which is appropriate to the desire. If the will behind the prayer is weak, no effect may ensue. But if it be strong, then it may arouse an entity in the invisible realms. If the prayer is for a selfish or evil purpose, the entity aroused cannot be but evil, and once aroused it may attract, lure, and enmesh the worshipper by the granting of the desired boon, which can never have been secured except by unethical means. Do you desire power, wealth, and possessions? If karma has not given them to you, you can have them only by denying them to the needy, or by diverting them from those who have earned them through merit and hard work. Do you bow and prostrate yourself before immaterial presences, that they may side with you and destroy your enemies, so that your path may become smooth and strewn with roses? It can be done by doing injustice, by abetting a wrong, and by violating the laws of brotherhood. He who offers prayers and boasts that his desire has been fulfilled rarely knows that he is enjoying fruits obtained through the forbidden channel of black magic, and that sooner or later he will have to pay a staggering price for acquiring that which karma had refused to give him. Priestcraft, which encourages such acts and thrives on them, makes of the priest an outpost of evil, which thus perpetuates its existence in the engines of wrongdoing. It is a truism that only those engaged in prayers as are ignorant of the universal sway of karma. These same people promptly admit the truth of the statement that as you sow, so will you reap. But their acceptance of its veracity is for the most part superficial. They secretly believe that prayers and rituals and falling at the feet of strange gods can and do make the working of karma ineffective. These persons refuse to believe that karma is an intelligent law, and that there are powers, principalities, and potencies that take part in the impersonal and active governance of things. Can you invoke a divine power and expect it to serve your unethical and even immoral purpose? Can you implore God to break all canons of universal law, of virtue, and of justice, so that you may prosper in your acts of injustice and unbrotherliness? All reason shouts that you cannot invoke the divine power with impunity. But it is unfortunately in your power to surrender your humanity to the evil forces in nature that will do your work for you and extract their soul-destroying price afterwards. If, as shown, prayer, as ordinarily understood, and as the average man knows it, is dangerous and to be avoided, is there such a thing as true prayer, of which the prayers of church, temple, and synagogue are but caricatures and distortions? There is true prayer, and it pertains in the inner man. The pious Christian, if he swears by the New Testament, will find guidance in the words attributed to Jesus in the Gospel of St. Matthew. And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen by men. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. Under his advice, congregational prayer is ruled out, along with ostentatious prayer. So also is ruled out prayer to any god outside of the individual. The directions given are unambiguous and specific. The individual has to enter his closet, no church or synagogue. Close the door, isolation is a requisite, and pray to his Father, which is in secret. All these injunctions have been brushed aside by the clergy and laity alike, and in place of thy Father which is in secret is substituted a God which is alien to the spirit of the gospel. Who is this Father in secret to whom the gospel advises all prayer be addressed? The Christian Trinity of the Holy Ghost, the Father and the Son, corresponds to abstract spirit, differentiated spirit, and embodied spirit. Since none of these are distinct either from the man's finite self or from the infinite presence, prayer has to be offered by each man to the highest potency which resides in him. Prayer, in its only true aspect, becomes an ardent turning of the soul towards the divine. The lesser light seeks for and tries to merge itself into the greater light, which is its father and its source. For the devotee of knowledge, true prayer becomes a mystery and an occult process by which pure and unselfish, yet finite and conditioned thoughts and desires get transmuted into spiritual will. It is this transmutation brought about by the intimate and close union between the man's embodied soul and its own spiritual counterpart, which stirs the hidden yet active and creative force to action. In this context, prayer becomes an occult and holy process by which the embodied self addresses its higher spiritual ego, which at all times stand immersed in the light of Logos. Such prayer sends up wave upon wave of willpower, and thus becomes worthy of a response from on high. What, then, would be the prerequisites for one who desires to offer true prayer? What rules must he follow? What words should he utter? The first, and perhaps the most important requisite, is an unshakable faith in the just and merciful working of the laws of karma, and in the acceptance of the fact that these cannot be obstructed by any agency, nor caused to deviate by prayer or by any propitiatory ceremony. Unless the individual accepts this without any reservations whatsoever, he is bound sooner or later to fall prey to the alluring promises of priests and soothsayers, and of those who for remuneration will sell amulets, philters, talismans, and other tinsel of the exploiter's trade. Prayer to the God within, which in fact is the desire for union with one's God, requires of the aspirant a purity in his mental and physical nature which is total. It is a self-evident fact that one cannot rise to divinity when one is firmly held down in the bog of materiality. The aspirant has to realize that there can be no true inner purity if his tongue has the habit of running away with falsehoods. The liar and the cheat, the man of sensuous appetites and he who is ambitious, have not the qualifications and therefore not the ability to make their voices heard in the silence. Light on the Path has valuable advice to offer. This may be summarized briefly. 1. Though the ordinary man asks perpetually, his voice is not heard, for he asks with his mind only, and the voice of the mind is only heard on that plane on which the mind acts. 2. The demand, or prayer, of the neophyte remains unheard until the voice in which it is uttered has lost the power to wound. 3. No voice can penetrate to his inner hearing till it has become a divine voice, a voice which gives no utterance to the cries of self. 4. He has to conquer the hunger of the heart and to refuse to live on the love of others. 5. To obtain the pure silence necessary for the disciple, the heart and emotions, the brain and its intellectualisms, have to be put aside. 6. He must suffer, must enjoy or endure, more keenly than other men, while yet he has taken on himself a duty which does not exist for other men, that of not allowing his suffering to shake him from his fixed purpose. 7. If his lofty contact can really arouse him, he becomes as one of the divine in his desire to give rather than to take, in his wish to help rather than to be helped, in his resolution to feed the hungry rather than to take manna from heaven for himself.